We begin tonight with the war in Ukraine, where nearly 4 million people have fled the country, according to the UN Refugee Agency.
Russia is now concentrating its efforts in eastern Ukraine and may be focused on trying to split off part of the country. CBS News correspondent Skyler Henry has more.
Ukrainians in the southern city of Kherson took to the streets to protest the Russian invasion and occupation, as explosions could be heard in the distance. Pentagon officials believe Russia has launched nearly 1,400 missiles into Ukraine, but isn't furthering its advance on the capital city, Kyiv. The Kremlin says ceasefire negotiations will resume Tuesday. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's ready for a compromise in the eastern Donbas region, which has been partially controlled by Russia-backed separatists since 2014. Here in Washington, President Biden said he's not walking back his unscripted comment that said Russian President Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power, but says he's not calling for regime change.
I want to make it clear, I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it.
The president added the last thing he wants the U.S. to do is engage in a land or nuclear war with Russia.
People like this shouldn't be ruling countries, but they do. The fact they do, but doesn't mean I can't express my outrage about it.
Idaho Senator Jim Risch, the ranking Republican member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, called President Biden's comment a, quote, horrendous gaffe. Skyler Henry, CBS News, the White House.
For more, let's bring in Ed O'Keefe. Ed is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent. Hi there, Ed. So we saw you in Europe covering the president on his trip, and we also saw you in the room today at the White House, where the president fielded several questions about a comment he made in Poland this past Saturday. Let's listen to some of that.
I'm not walking anything back. The fact of the matter is I was expressing the moral outrage I felt toward the way Putin is dealing in the actions of this man. Just brutality of half the children in Ukraine. I just come from being with those families.
So, Ed, what's the backstory here, and where exactly does this leave the administration's position when it comes to dealing with Russia?
Well, officially, there's been no change in policy, no formal belief that Vladimir Putin should be removed. But we know the president made this off-the-cuff remark at the end of his speech in Warsaw, essentially saying that Vladimir Putin, in his personal view, should be removed. He claimed in the press conference he held with reporters this afternoon that it was his own personal belief that this should happen, and that he was, in essence, speaking directly to the Russian people, saying, y'all should do something about this, in essence, but that we're not formally taking any steps to remove him ourselves. This has created a bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, over the last several days. Very quickly that night in Poland, or afternoon here in Washington, the administration sought to clarify that the president wasn't announcing a formal change in policy. The Secretary of State had to do the same at a conference in Israel yesterday. And today, the president, in essence, said, no change in policy, but I don't apologize for what I said. I believe, personally, that Putin should go.
And Ed, the president came back home to a drop in polling numbers. A new NBC poll shows the president's approval is slipping to 40%. Those are the lowest levels of his presidency so far. So what's behind the drop, and how's the White House addressing it?
Declining support for the president among even members of his own base, women, black voters, Latinos, independents, all of them overall seeing the number in terms of approval sag. There is not majority support for how he's handling this Ukraine crisis, although the poll pointed out, and we should point out, that it was taken before the president finished the trip in Europe and gave the speech that he was talking about, that we're talking about. And so, look, he remains an incredibly unpopular president, much like his predecessor. And they understand here at the White House that they're going to have to demonstrate through the work he did in Ukraine last week and will continue to do, through the budget proposal he put out today, and in other ways, that they're doing something to try to turn around those numbers.
Let's talk about this budget proposal a bit more. The White House released its more than $5.7 trillion budget this morning, with increased military and social spending of note. What does this reveal about the White House's priorities?
That they're shifted back to the center. Remember, budgets are political documents. You've heard us all say that here before on Budget Day, or a statement of priorities, not settled budgetary law. And they most certainly won't be based on this document. This is just essentially the White House signaling to Congress, this is what we'd like you to do. We'd like you to increase Pentagon spending. We'd like you to boost social spending on a host of programs that are of concern to Democrats. But we'd also like to do things like increase funding for police agencies across the country and put in place what they're calling a billionaire's tax that would essentially target Americans with a household income of $100 million or more. Unclear how many of those people are actually billionaires. But in essence, get about the 700 wealthiest people or families in the country to pay up to help fund a lot of these programs. They also point out that there's deficit reduction in this. Most Americans don't vote on the concept of deficit reduction, but by talking about deficit reduction, you're talking about reducing government spending at a time of record high inflation. And so they say here at the White House, focused on that, focused on security and safety by boosting military and police spending, and then on longer term priorities that are of importance to Democratic Party voters. But, you know, they barely or struggled to get a spending agreement passed this year for this current fiscal year. With total Democratic control. Coming up on an election year, it's unclear that they'll be able to get it done by the end of the fiscal year in late September before the election. So we'll see over time whether or not any of this is able to get enacted. And ultimately, the person that may matter more in this is not the president, not his new budget director, but a guy we spend a lot of time talking about here, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who, of course, is that key vote in the Senate to move this kind of legislation along. That tax on billionaires, the focus on dealing with inflation, boosting military spending, and then some of these other domestic priorities are all built around winning the support of moderates like Manchin, Senator Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, and those maybe dozen to 2 dozen what Democrats call frontline members who are more moderate and face re-election in swing districts later this year.
Hey, Ed, speaking of Joe Manchin, he announced over the weekend that he's ready to support the president's Supreme Court pick, Ketanji Brown Jackson. That's likely welcome news for the president and Democrats. Today, Biden addressed the nomination of the judge. Take a listen.
This is one of the most qualified nominees ever nominated for the Supreme Court in every respect, in terms of her disposition, her intellectual capacity, her experience and background, serving on 3 additional courts, a woman who is totally, thoroughly qualified.
So, Ed, where does the confirmation process for Judge Jackson go from here? I mean, she seems to have the support of Democrats.
Of Democrats, yes. Joe Manchin probably was the cherry on top of that cake. Judiciary Committee announced today they're going to hold a vote a week from today to get her out of committee and onto the full Senate. It is likely, given the even divide of the Senate, that right now there'll be 11 votes for her and 11 votes from the Republican side against her. So what does the Senate do in the event of a tie? Well, in essence, the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, can bring up the issue for a vote in the full Senate and essentially get it released from a bunch of procedural steps and ultimately hold a final vote on her confirmation. At current count, presuming all members of the Democratic caucus are on board and nobody signaled they aren't, it'll ultimately be a vote of 51 to 50, with the vice president casting the tie-breaking vote. Unless or until a Republican signals in the next few days that they're supporting her, that's probably where things are headed. So there will be a little bit of a hiccup, and the tie-breaking nature of things right now in the Senate is just reflective of the closely divided Congress we have. But ultimately, she appears to be headed for confirmation at this point, and it'll just be a question of whether there's any Republican support for her.
All right, CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, a little birdie tells me one more title to add today, birthday boy. Happy birthday, Ed O'Keefe. I hope you get to have some cake and ice cream.
That is on the agenda.
Very good, sir. Very good. Thank you. Happy birthday.
Ed. Thanks for spending it with us.